Welcome to the Mark Winsor Show. And Tom Diller, my co-host.
Good seeing you.
On the heels of a very interesting show, in my opinion. And a couple of the guests from the prior show are hanging out. And we've got a couple of new guests. So with us, Tom Diller, my co-host. How long have you been with me now?
Gosh, about 6 months, 7 months maybe?
Has it really?
Yeah,
been
at least
that
so,
long?
at least, yeah.
Really?
That's like 24,000 cheese balls.
That would, oh yes, right. That would explain.
That's right.
Last week, guys, I can tell you he tried to change the name of the show to the Diller and Winsor Show, but
Sounds better.
Yeah, I'm sure the
Yeah.
day will come. And with us is Mark Victor, who has been with us before, at least with Tom. I was in.
You were in the jungle somewhere.
I was in the jungles of Costa Rica at the time.
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to bring him back because he has a lot of good things to say, and I think you two are going to agree on a lot of things.
Yes.
Do you know his background? Attorneyforfreedom.com.
I know enough that Tom's told me. And did you used to have a billboard on short sales?
Yes.
I know about
years
that.
ago when I was not smart enough to stay out of the whole loan modification world.
That is refreshing to hear because some of us mock that billboard saying he has no idea what he's getting into.
Actually, I was naive enough to think that I would be standing there saving homeowners from these crazy foreclosures that were going on. It would make sense for the banks, for the homeowner, for everybody else.
But the banks didn't think that way.
It just didn't turn out that way, did it?
And with him is Mike Wasden, his paralegal, or one of the paralegals. Welcome.
Thank you.
And you have to share Mike because hanging over from the last show is Dr. Frank Tamburi. So we'll still be on politics, so that should be fun.
I can switch gears. Medicine, law. I was actually law school and medical school at the same time, and I was in the mock trial, so Mark and I probably would have been cohorts at some point, but we'll switch back to politics.
And when Dr. Tamburi told me that Saturday, I looked at him and says, some days I wonder if I took the right path. No, I do love it. I think what I learned in law school and in this legal career has been a wonderful, wonderful thing. And then sitting in the background are several others who may, who knows, jump in to grab a mic or something as well. So after the show ended, the show right before this, my special edition show, we were at the end of that show talking about the importance of getting involved if you want to make a difference. You can whine and cry and bawl and all of that stuff about the state of our economy, about legal issues on gun control that Mark will talk to us about and that kind of stuff. But really, if you want to make a difference, get involved. Get involved a little bit.
We're going to make a point about that, kind of a segue, I guess. I know that the last show was all about the Ron Paul issue and being involved. Kind of a bigger part to it. I voted for Ron Paul back in 1988, so I've been doing this a long time. I used to listen to talk radio when I was 14. My grandparents raised me from the Great Depression.
Sick.
So I know I didn't have any friends. All my friends were old people, and of course now I do prostate cancer for a living, so I still have older people that I do. But the reason I was bringing that up is, many ways I look at what happened to the 2000 election with Bush versus Gore and that election going off. They said that Ralph Nader, for instance, was irrelevant to be in the debates, and yet then afterwards he was too relevant because he swayed the election, right? And I think the Ron Paul issue is the same thing. It's the problem of not having legitimate third parties allowed in the national discussion. That's what it's about. It's not having everyone in their drunk uncle trying to run for president. We're talking about parties. There's only a handful of them that are on the ballot on enough states that theoretically, if they won them, they can win the Electoral College and win. That's a legitimate party. And when you go to vote in the voting booth, there's only, if you think about it, only about 3 to 5 names for president of the United States of America. And yet you only know 2 of the names for the average person.
And only 2 have a chance, quite frankly.
Well, they only have a chance because they're the only 2 that are given access to the debates.
Yes.
And that's my point. How is it possible that you can be on the ballot on all 50 states and not be in the national debate? And so therefore, with this happening over and over again, Ron Paul as an example, as a libertarian.
Doctor, it goes one step past that, though. The last couple of years, as I mentioned in the previous show, I didn't leave. I entered more into the local precinct committee, legislative district political scene. And I learned, my eyes were opened. My eyes were open to the incredible power that this GOP structure has. It's a tremendous. In fact, you want to get elected in my legislative district, you better be a member of one of the parties, and it probably ought to be Republican, quite frankly. It's very hard to be elected as a Democrat, almost impossible as an independent in where I'm living.
I don't want to dominate this whole thing. I just want to finish this one point, though, is that I think a lot of it comes down to the people, the average American who goes in to vote, and they get the little sticker that says, I voted today. They think they're an educated voter, and yet they literally only knew 50% of their options. They're the ones not going forward and asking. So therefore, someone like Ron Paul, as an example, ran as a libertarian on what he believed. He was not allowed in. He had the same message then that he has now. And yet, here it is, he was forced. Yes. Can't beat them, join them. He comes through just like me. I was a libertarian. I switched to become a Republican 10 years ago, and we've all had to be forced to do the same thing. So my last point with this is, if the Mitt Romney general neocon Republicans feel that this problem of Ron Paul is a problem, then if they would allow third parties into the debate, Ron Paul and people like us would take off and join another party, and that way we'd all have equal access for the type of culture, political culture that we want.
Yeah. Joe, did we get a call in?
Yeah, you know what? We've got Gail Buck, founder of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Arizona chapter, on the line here.
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Gail,
Welcome.
this is Tom Diller. How are you doing? Thanks for calling.
Sure, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, so I'll do the best I can here.
Okay, Gail is calling in because there was recently a $50 million issue with monies that were put aside for mortgage delinquencies and foreclosure rescue or help, I guess. And the monies, I guess, is quietly trying to be moved to or swept away into another, I guess, fund or used for something different than what it was set aside for. So,
Yeah.
Gail, go right ahead.
We're actually, people, it's kind of funny because when you hear people talking and you hear the media, you would assume that Arizona's leading the way, we're out of trouble, our prices are increasing, and that is not complete accurate information. We're still only worse than Nevada. Nevada has 60% of people underwater. Arizona is second. We still have 48.3% of people underwater in our state. So to think that we're, past any problem is ridiculous. And we were awarded $1.6 billion. Of that, $97 million of that was cash that's supposed to be used to help people that experience mortgage fraud, people that need credit counseling. Some of the people that have already gone through the default process. This money is here to help them get a steady footing again. And our governor, I guess, she is an elected official, and I guess she has a right, but for whatever reason, she can take that money and reallocate it to the general budget or wherever the heck she wants. And that just blows me away. We are nowhere near coming out of this housing crisis, and our state is the housing industry is so important to the state of Arizona that this, I just think, is going to set us back even further. It's very frustrating for me.
And this is Mark, I guess just
Mark Victor.
Mark Victor, yeah. In my opinion, this caller really highlights why I think the United States is going to suffer a dramatic financial catastrophe.
Another one.
Well, no, we haven't seen anything like what's coming. We saw a tiny little hiccup compared to what's coming. And this is the problem, because we got realtors calling in saying, in essence, look, there's a little piece of the stolen money that has been stolen through means of taxation from American citizens, and I think that stolen money ought to be used for X, Y, Z, because I have a particular cause. My particular cause is foreclosures. I'm a realtor. I'm interested in foreclosures. So now let's get another caller who calls up and says, there's other money that should be designated for cancer research. And let's get an educator who calls up and says, no, there's other money that needs to be designated for education. The problem is the money is owned by the person who made the money. The person who you call a taxpayer, who the government stole their money. The government took their money. And you, ma'am, have absolutely no right to decide how another person's money is spent. Right. Period. And until we get over that point, we are not going to be able to cut a damn thing in this
Mark,
country.
Let's have Gail. I don't know if that's what her point was. Go ahead, Gail.
I'm a little lost here. Is that directed at me?
Because it's Mark Victor. So
it's directed at.
But you know what? I didn't decide that money should be used for the real estate. The law settlement, the lawsuit sued the banks for the real estate community. I didn't make that decision.
So let's be good Americans. Let's agree.
So money came.
The lawsuit is specifically for that. And just so you understand, as a real estate professional, for crying out loud, this money is to help people in a default crisis. This doesn't help me sell.
All this money,
or
the
buy
government
more
spends
properties at all.
trillions of dollars to help people.
What your point is.
My point is the government, ma'am, the government spends trillions of dollars. Every one of those dollars is to help somebody.
All right, that was a fun exchange.
Every one of those dollars is to help somebody. Let's
Very
agree
fun
as
exchange.
good Americans to
Let's
say
go
this.
ahead.
How about we take the owner of the money decides what happens with the money? Let's as
The
Americans
money
agree
was
today to move
decided.
forward.
It was part of a lawsuit. The
There you go.
lawsuit was for the people that experienced these default issues. There was a national lawsuit, and that's what the money was earmarked for.
So-
I didn't make that decision, nor am I one group that's saying we needed to go into this particular pot. I'm not that at all. That's what that money was won for.
So
Okay,
the
well,
question really
That
goes
was already
back to
pre-decided, but our state, I guess, this is going to decide they're going to use it otherwise.
yeah. So the question is Mark, you came out and said it was stolen. Why, in your view, was it stolen in the first place instead of set aside from a lawsuit?
Well, I don't
what
know.
makes you think it was stolen?
I don't know anything about the lawsuit, so I don't know what the
All right,
issues
so you're
are.
presuming that it was just a normal tax.
Well, I thought
Did it
when
come?
she said there was money that was earmarked, that was set aside, and we're talking about where the way the governor was going to spend it.
but the word, I mean, you're an attorney. The word stolen.
No. And you might want to look up on that before you beat me up again. It's a lawsuit. It was a national lawsuit that the Attorney General and some of the states participated in. Arizona participated. And so when our Attorney General joined the bandwagon and they're going after Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and Bank of America and Wells Fargo, and they're saying, we need this money. You need this money to pay it to our constituents so that it goes to help them fight their legal battles and get credited.
Yeah, I
credit
smell-
help
I
and all this
smell a
kind of
rat.
stuff. This
You know,
is what the lawsuit was.
Wouldn't it be nice?
specifically for.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could just have capitalism again?
Well, yeah,
If we
but
could
that's
have
not the point.
lenders. That lenders made loans and lenders took risks. And when people defaulted, lenders lost, and the government didn't bail anybody out, and no one got a subsidy, and Congress wasn't standing
But
jumping up and down.
even capitalism allows lawsuits to.
I'm fine with
regain
I'm
those
fine with
So-
lawsuits
so
as
here we
long as
have
there's
money
been
that.
as long as there has been a breach of contract or a trespass.
Well, clearly,
But to get to
clearly,
your,
some judge thought there was, or there wouldn't be money set aside. So let's just and thank you, Gail. We'll address this more as we move on. But let's just look at the word stolen, and we're going beyond. We're now not talking about the mortgage money that was set aside by a lawsuit. We're now just going to general taxes. Do I understand your position to be that all taxes are theft? Is that what you're
here's what I
That's
think
an
a
interesting
theft
position.
is. Here's what I think a
Theft
theft
is
is.
interesting.
A theft is when property, money or property, is taken from the lawful owner without consent at the threat of force. Now, you can call that taxation. You can have a man with a shiny badge who comes to the house first and knocks nicely on the door and says, hey, you owe X amount of dollars. But at the end of the day, if the owner of that money says, you know what, I think I'm going to choose to keep my money in my wallet because I'm the owner of that money, eventually somebody with a gun is going to smash down the front door and take things. That's theft.
That is a unique view.
It's
so
really,
how
it's really
how-
not. It's really not a unique
Actually,
view.
it's exactly.
I hold the same view.
And it's not just even about the taxes. And what he says is correct. It's any law. If you put up a jaywalking sign, many of us have issues with the jaywalking sign because it's a lethal force law. People laugh. But if
Yeah.
you go through, if you jaywalk
that
again
sounds
and
like
again,
such a radical idea. I just completely disagree. To me,
every
that sounds
law
like
ultimately
how can you
leads to a
have
gun
any
to your head.
system of society function without rules of law?
The question-
Are you saying the same with speeding?
I'm not
Are you
saying not
the
to
same
have
on
laws.
speeding?
I'm
That
not
you
saying-
can't have speeding laws. So
No.
Who
Wait.
draws that line?
I didn't say no laws. What I'm saying is you have to be careful that every time you add a law that you think is benign, it has ramifications.
Sure,
ultimately
but let's just take
taken
it.
through.
Do you believe
That's
there
the
should
point.
or should not be speeding laws?
It's a
All right,
function of.
wait, stick with me. Should there or should there not be speeding laws?
It's a.
I
it's
think
not.
speeding laws are
is,
okay.
is
All
he
right,
the?
very good.
Wait,
Let's just focus on that. Now, if you have a speeding law, don't you need somebody to enforce it?
Yes,
Who pays that person?
government
Where do you get the money to pay that person? Where do you get the
taxation.
taxation? Okay,
Right.
so I don't know how the United States of America, the Army, do you believe we need a defense?
Mark, let's go slow. When you ask the doctor if he thinks there should be speeding laws, my question would be to the doctor, do you own the road? If the doctor says, yes, I own the road, then the doctor gets to make decisions about how the road operates. If the doctor's not the owner of the road, then the doctor doesn't get to answer the question. And so if we privatize roads, and I know this seems radical, but guess what? 99% of the roads are
That
made by
makes no
private
sense.
companies. Of course,
that makes no sense.
If-
Because
if
who
the-
enforces it? A private person? Are you telling me we have no
government?
government?
The rules? Who said anything about no government? Who said anything
just
about no
inferred
laws?
it.
No. We're not saying anarchy. Again, people. It's kind of how
that is exactly where you just walked down that path. Absolutely.
It's almost like liberals look at conservatives because they don't really listen to Rush Limbaugh. They just assume conservatives are all racist, right?
Let me try to define.
Wait, and then conservatives don't really understand our point of view. They go the simplistic thinking that we're all anarchists and want to legalize pot. It's not. It's more of a
when
deeper
you use terms
philosophy.
of theft and taxes in the same
Yes.
sentence,
Let me
no
try to-
wonder we jump
Mark,
to that conclusion.
let me try-
It makes absolutely no
let me
sense
try to
say
clarify-
that we live in a
let me
society
try to
and
clar-
we say that tax
Let
is
me try to
theft.
clarify my position.
That makes no sense.
My position is this. Coercion is wrong. The initiation of force for any purpose is wrong. I'm perfectly fine with laws, so long as they don't involve the initiation of force or the use of coercion. So, for example, if we had a law that says you are in charge of your body and I don't get to hit you over the head, that's a perfectly fine law because that's consistent with the notion that coercion is wrong. So when you ask me, Mark, what I hear when you ask me questions about the government, well, here's the way I hear your question, Mark. Do you think we as human beings can live on the planet without coercing our neighbors into doing things they don't want to do? My answer is yes. Your answer is no. That's where we disagree. If you want to
first
have
of all, you don't know my answer is no to that, but let's go even one step further, because we're getting down to the question as to whether there should be taxes or whether taxes is theft. And I look at it and I say, we need a military. Who pays the army guys?
Before we reach who pays the army guys, can we agree on one thing?
I don't know.
No, that's what I'm going to ask. My question is this. No matter what the purpose, no matter how important I think the purpose is, do I have a right to go into your wallet, take out your money, and spend it on things you don't want to spend it on?
You as Mark Victor? No.
Well, if I add with Tom and Mike, if we all add together, what if we vote on it?
Yes.
Oh, then we're okay.
Yes.
And
If
then
it's for a purpose that protects the entire society.
Okay, wait a second.
If
I don't have that right individually.
Yes, if it's a purpose.
He doesn't have that right individually.
Yes.
He doesn't have that right individually.
If it's a purpose
None of
that
them
protects all of society, we vote for the leaders who do that.
How do you
yes.
define protecting society?
I'm using the military as an example. Okay. Joey, my nephew here, served in the military. He went over and protected our lives. So I'm saying to myself, I want to pay that guy. But I don't want somebody else to say, no, I don't want to pay him, and all of a sudden we only have a few people paying him.
And if you want to pay him, you have every right to pay him.
But it's protecting you as well, so you ought to pay your fair share and move out of the jurisdiction that he's protecting. It is working that way.
So said another way, you feel that you have a right to go into another human being's wallet and spend their money on things that they
That's not a proper way. That's a mischaracterization of what I'm saying.
Okay, well, help me
what
understand
I'm saying
then.
is that a group of people living together as a society must have laws to protect the entire society.
We agree. We should protect them against people who want to steal their money and spend it on things they don't want to spend it on.
Protect them in every way. We should protect them, for example, from foreign powers coming in. That's in the Constitution. We should protect them from foreign enemies.
I want to protect them against other Americans who want to steal their money and spend it on things they don't want to spend it on.
There are laws to protect from other citizens stealing, and you're an attorney, so I'm amazed that you're using that word theft so loosely.
I'm not using it. I'm very circumscribed with how I use the word theft.
No, you're very loose on it.
A theft is a taking of somebody else's property without their permission, period.
But that is not the legal definition in my mind.
Okay, 2 seconds. Let me jump in. Gail Buck, I apologize. We're going to have you back next week because her point of view was not expressed tonight. It just wasn't. I mean, you have your point of view.
It was overridden by Mark.
I respect everybody's point of view, but we need to respect her point of view. She was basically yelled off the air. And again, no disrespect to anybody sitting in this room here. She didn't get a chance to express her point of view, and she has a lot of good things to say. She's extremely well-respected realtor in this state. She's a business owner and a broker. She does a lot of good for our community. So we will have her next Tuesday so she can correctly express her point of view. Gail, I apologize. We will see you next Tuesday if you're available. Let's get on with this other stuff.
All right. So I do not believe that we just let private citizens make all the rules on their own, and each little street, each little house, each little neighborhood has different sets of rules. We need society to have a functioning set of rules that governs everyone living within that geographic boundary called the United States of America.
The thing we're looking at too is the extreme. You're taking the extreme on one hand that we're looking at anarchy because of the words that he used, and I agree with in theory. But at the same time, that same concept of you having the general public vote for what's the good for society and not see it as coercion or theft. That's how you get, for instance, being arrested in certain states if you sell a Happy Meal, right? Or raw milk.
Is that a misuse of that right, or is that the right itself?
It's a misuse, but
Okay.
that's
But
exactly. So therefore,
so-
it's the concept of respecting what that is. So a law, we're not saying not to have laws, but the point is we see a law as a much more dangerous or profound entity than most people who just willy-nilly say, okay, let's just have a law, or sending troops off to war.
Right. So Mark thinks that national defense is important, and he has a whole host of reasons. Well, Barack Obama thinks that health care is important, and he says, look, I would never steal your money. I would never force anything on you. But, we as a community feel that health care is such an important basic human right that it's okay for us to reach into your wallet and take money out of it and spend it on things that we find important.
And if you've ever listened to my show, I am completely against Barack Obama's health care, but you've never used me.
You missed my point.
You've never heard. I heard your point. No, you didn't. You're saying I didn't because you're trying to read my mind, which I think is astounding that you can read my mind.
I was watching you,
Good
Mark.
job.
I was
read
watching
my
you,
mind.
Mark. You totally missed the point.
The point is that you cannot say because there's a law allowing health care that equals theft because we didn't consent to it. No, we can change that law by voting in somebody else who will change it the other direction.
But is it possible, Mark, that you've been sold a bill of goods by the government that says this? No matter what anybody thinks, if the majority decides to impose something on the minority, and everybody's given an opportunity to vote, whether they choose to vote or not, if the majority decides something is okay, they then have a moral right to impose it on the minority. That seems to
That's
me
what democracy is.
No.
Of course it is. It's
Not
majority
the United
rule.
States of America does not rule on a simple democracy. We have 3 branches of government, including a court system, and a Bill of Rights to protect the minorities. And we've seen many. I mean, you're an attorney, for crying out loud. How can you shut your eyes to the years and years of history of the courts protecting the minority?
Oh, really?
Yes.
When you say the court's protecting the minority,
Yes.
are you talking about the way the courts have construed the Commerce Clause to protect the rights of people, property owners, and over the last 100 years or
Slavery. We can talk about slavery.
Well,
we can
slavery
talk
was
about Brown
perfect.
versus Board of
The
Education.
let's talk about both of those. The
can talk-
Constitution was interpreted to permit both of those things, segregation and slavery, for a long, long time.
But not today. So it has.
So somebody changed their mind.
But who? Our system. Exactly. That's my point. We have 3 branches of government.
So if the
where-
court decides, if the Heller case had gone the other way, if the Supreme Court had decided, we agree with most of the appellate circuits that the Second Amendment protects a collective right of the states to have a National Guard, you would have just said, well, hey, that's the way the Supreme Court's interpreted. I guess I was been mistaken about the nature of Americans to own guns pursuant to the Second Amendment the entire time, right?
The story doesn't end there, as you know. The story continues. We still have a right to vote in the politicians who can change the court.
Not
not
the Constitution. They don't change the Constitution.
Sure they can.
With
We
an
can
amendment.
change it. Sure.
So you would have
Sure.
you would have
It's been
simply-
changed, has it not?
You would have simply accepted the decision of the United States Supreme Court to interpret the Second Amendment, which of course didn't happen. But had they interpreted the Second Amendment in the Heller case to say it's just a collective right, it doesn't protect them, you would have said, hey, that's just life in the big city. I guess
No.
we're SOL.
No.
And if the
I would have
Supreme
worked
Court
through the
rules for
system, it would
Barack
change.
Obama's national health care, you'll sign on and say, well.
And your position is the opposite. Your position is we shouldn't have any of those rules and just be each person on their own. That
Mark,
is
you've
so
said about 10 times now that you've mischaracterized the 3 of our positions now about 10 times by saying that we are saying there should be no rules, there should be no laws.
But you can't answer the question. If you're going to have laws,
Well,
how do you pay the person that enforces them?
Let me finish. Here's a rule that I think we should very strictly construe. You do not have a right to spend the money of another person, no matter how dire you think the need is. And I don't have a right to spend your money or anyone else's money. I would like to strictly enforce that rule. No matter how important you think
Then
the
who
rule...
funds any program?
You do. If you want it funded, you fund it.
So if I just say I don't want to fund the military, then I don't fund the military. That seems so ridiculous.
I think no matter what the consequences, I don't have a right to reach into your. I know you don't.
Dr.
You can
Tamburi,
smile.
you
Mark,
actually
you can smile
believe with
and
what
say
I've
you don't
learned
like that,
about
but
you
you
that
are
we should
supporting
not
theft.
Support our military if we don't want to support our military. As an individual citizen, should not pay into taxes to support our military. Do you actually believe that?
No, I have not stated that in any way.
That's why I'm asking.
I have no issue necessarily with the government as the people paying for the military. I mean, I believe it's in the Constitution to defend our borders.
Yes.
That's one of the very few articles or points that is allowed to take money and collect the money through taxation for the military. That I have no problem with at all. It's all the other things that people think are rights that are not rights. That's where it starts to get a little messy.
Okay, so I'm not disagreeing with you, so I'm coming back over to where the extremist is.
Actually, you can call me an extremist if you
I
want,
just did.
but that's fine. You can say whatever you like, but my position's actually pretty simple. You don't have a right to commit aggression against another person, no matter how important you think the cause is. Now, if you think that makes me an extremist, I think that seems pretty crazy. I think your position that it's okay to initiate force against another person is pretty extreme.
But the Constitution.
Who cares about the Constitution?
I didn't vote for the
You're
Constitution.
kidding. See that?
Who gives a damn about it?
So you were saying that the three of us. I'm hoping, Dr. Tenbury, that you're not on that side of it. I care a lot about the
I
Constitution.
don't give a damn about it.
How can you say
Well,
that?
I'm shocked. over
I'm
that.
just, what? You don't.
It's a piece of paper. It doesn't mean anything.
so
See, and
there
I
are
have a
different.
belief.
There are
Let me tell you,
different
you know,
levels.
wait, no.
of
Here's
that.
the thing.
what I'm
It
saying.
doesn't
There are-
matter what it says. It matters who interprets it.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what it matters.
That is true.
I
So-
believe the Constitution was an inspired document of God.
Well,
That's
I don't
what
believe in God nonsense either. So there we
I
go.
believe that. So that's one of the places where we part company. Is the fundamental belief was that document the inspired?
No.
Maybe the Articles of Confederation was inspired. I mean, certainly there was a wealth of Americans at the time, roughly 50%, who did not support the Constitution,
It would be
who
very,
were
very
anti-federalists,
interesting.
who liked the Articles of Confederation.
It'd be very interesting to get some perspectives of what you view government as in just a moment.
I view
Joe, can you get us our commercials for a moment? We have to support our sponsors who support us. So we're going to take a little breather here. Listen, if leave your earphones on. You'll love our first sponsor if Joe can find the right one. And we
Must
do
be something communistic or
listen,
something.
we do appreciate our listeners and our sponsors. Please support our sponsors. Thank you, Joe.
Are you having plumbing or septic problems? No worries. Call Cartwright's Queen Creek Plumbing and Septic Service. Been in the Valley since 1996. Family owned and operated. Proudly serving East Valley and surrounding areas. With a full range of services from drain cleaning, septic tank pumping, general maintenance and repairs, inspections for the sale of your home. They provide excellent and courteous service for all your plumbing and septic needs. We're not satisfied till you are satisfied. Licensed, bonded, and insured. Call today. Cartwright's Queen Creek Plumbing and Septic Service. Contact Denise at 480-987-8051. That's 480-987-8051. Are you ready to start taking control of your future and maximize your earning potential? Central Arizona College has smaller class sizes and personalized attention to help you compete in today's tough job market. CAC now serves Santan Valley and Queen Creek. The CAC Santan Center is located in the shops at Copper Basin on Hunt Highway, behind Barrow's Pizza. Stop in and see how taking classes at CAC costs a fraction of a state university, and your credits can transfer. So, if you want to earn real money, you need to learn real skills at Central Arizona College. Enroll in classes today by calling 480-677-7825 or visit www.centralaz.edu or call 480-677-7825 or visit www.centralaz.edu. Central Arizona College, your college, your way.
Welcome back to the Mark Winsor Show. Appreciate you joining me. In studio, I have the guest, Dr. Frank Tenbury. Welcome again.
Thank you.
Mike Wasden, a legal assistant for Mark Victor, who is also in studio with me, an attorney here in the Valley. Welcome. We were on a very...
Thanks for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. This has been a very, very fun little debate. So as we were ending, I was wanting to get a picture then of your form of how society would run.
Here's how I think society should run. I mean, I think that we ought to have strict rules that say no person has the right to live off of the income, the property, the means, the profits of another person. And so I would want laws that were consistent with that notion, that were consistent with the concept that everybody has an absolute right to control his or her own body, property, money, time, to pursue their own happiness, to define their own happiness in any way they see fit, and they can do absolutely anything at all that they want with their own property, with the one proviso that they cannot trespass on another person. As many laws as you want to make that are consistent with those concepts, I'm happily in favor of. Any law that you make that violates those concepts, I would oppose. You could call it government all you like. The word government doesn't bother me at all. The word coercion bothers me, and I believe, maybe I'm an optimist, but I believe that we can have a productive, happy, moral society that survives just fine without the notion that we get to tell and boss our neighbors around and tell them what to do. That's my vision. And so I think that's the vision of many of the founders of our country.
Oh, I don't think it goes to that extreme, though, because if we just get to the simple question of then who pays for government, it's selective people. It's those who want the service of a particular...
Well, keep in mind that the government that was envisioned by the people who fought the American Revolution bears no resemblance to the government that we have today.
But it still was a government.
And really bears no resemblance to the Constitution that we have today. The Constitution was really a counter-revolution to the American Revolution.
But it did include taxation.
The American Revolution left us with the Articles of Confederation that didn't have very much of a central government, had no power for central taxation whatsoever. That was more in line with the notions of the American Revolution. Then, of course, we got the power grabbers, the Alexander Hamilton types who desired strong central government, and we got this great debate, really the greatest debate in the history of our country, which was the question over whether or not to adopt the Constitution. I mean, people they erroneously think that this was sort of a big love fest, that everybody got together and had this great divinely inspired Constitution, and the sun came out and it was all wonderful. The truth was this was a bitterly fought fight between the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. There's an equally large body of literature on the side of the Anti-Federalist. That's exactly where the statement "I smell a rat" comes from. It was about the Constitution, and there are lots of theories and some documented evidence that the Constitution actually came in as a result of a scam to shake down many of the people who were selling their Continentals, which had been devalued for 10 cents on the dollar. And if you look at the clauses in the Constitution that talk about redeeming debts against the federal government for full face value, that was the first official scam of the new government.
Dr. Tamburi, as I was getting to know you and other leaders Saturday, there was much talk about, there was many calls out from the leaders to your group calling yourselves constitutionalists. What is your view of the Constitution?
I think the Constitution, like you, is a profoundly beautiful document. It was a document of its time. It seems every few generations, every few hundred years, there was a revolution in thought, and that was the moment for the world. So I have a profound respect for it. Hence why I get so frustrated, as many of us do, that it's trampled on in so many ways. And without trying to turn this into a Ron Paul thing, I'm not trying to.
You're
but the
welcome
libertarian movement, if you consider it, the libertarianism is the party of our founding fathers, except perhaps Hamilton and some of the Federalists. I mean, we're talking Thomas Jefferson, we're talking Franklin, we're talking Adams. These were libertarians. I mean, on the Nolan graph, they run as libertarians. So here we have the third party, the third largest party, the party of the philosophy of our founders, and they're not even allowed in debate. So I don't want to go back to the whole issue, but it shows you how much profound respect I have for that document.
One other little point about the Constitution, that the Constitution, like every other written document, whether it's the Bible, whether it's any other book, whether it's the Declaration, you can take that language, because language isn't that precise. Language are representations for thoughts, and they're just not that precise. And the truth of the matter is, I believe that the people who were involved in the Constitution didn't act with one mind. They did have different views, just like our Congress today. You can get wherever you want to go with the Constitution. Barack Obama could sit right here and tell you exactly why his national health care initiative is constitutional, and he's a constitutional law professor. And guess what? Lots of members of the United States Supreme Court are going to agree with him. I don't think he's going to carry the day. I hope he doesn't. But the point of it is this. Just like when you talk about the Bible and divinely inspired Constitution, Christians who study the same exact Bible come to very different conclusions about the nature of what it means. And so the point here is this. There's a philosophy that I'm trying to promote. It's called freedom. If we can get there using the Constitution or the Articles of Confederation or the Communist Party Manifesto, I don't care. As long as we get there where property rights are protected and where human rights are protected and we're not trespassing on other people.
Human rights?
The rights of human beings to pursue their own ends, to define their own. Like, for example, let me give you an example. Because, far be it from me to want to be controversial. I don't, I shy away from controversy.
I could tell that by my collar that you screamed at.
But, how shameful of Americans today to make an issue over this question of marriage. I mean, who cares?
There's many people that care about
I know, but
that.
I'm saying,
one of them.
why do people care about who you're sleeping with, who you're loving, who you call your husband
because
or your wife?
God said
if you
so.
want to marry your pet
not the
frog,
argument, actually.
if you want to say, this pet turtle of mine, this is my husband or wife, good for you.
So
that doesn't
you're
mean
okay.
that doesn't mean I have to recognize their claim, but if they want to make that claim, what business is it of anyone else, especially the government? Why is this a political issue?
How about a father and a son?
Look, here's the fallacy in what you just said and the failure to understand what I'm putting forth. I'm talking about consenting adults. As soon as you bring a son in,
What if the son's 21?
Then it's fine. Whatever adults want to do with their own bodies is their business. Whether I morally agree or disagree is not relevant to the question. This is where we've gone awry as Americans.
Well, I think that argument takes us far away and
Well, so what if I take the position that marriage ought to be about one man and 5 women, and that's my position, and I think God inspired that position, and I think that's biblically inspired, and I think that's the morally correct position, and you have no right to say you're married if you're only married to one woman. Shouldn't I get to enforce my views on you?
Don't you think that there are always extremes on freedom that then curtail freedom?
No.
If we
I
give
don't.
so much freedom,
I don't think,
then
no,
we lose freedom.
The rights of people to control their own bodies, their own
But not
property
everybody
are
has that ability.
unlimited. Unlimited.
For example, with poverty, not everybody has the ability to prosper the way you may in your mind
You're
think
absolutely
they can prosper.
right.
Doesn't
You're
society
absolutely-
have any responsibility
No.
at all to protect and help them out at all?
Let's talk about that. Do you mean, and by the way, if you said, Mark, list the top 10 problems in America, this would be on my top 10 list. The inability or failure to identify the difference between a legal obligation and a moral obligation. You ask me this question, which I think would be received to the average American in a convoluted type of a way. Do I have a moral obligation to help somebody who's poor? That's a different discussion than do I have or should I have a legal obligation to help a poor person? So let me give you my answer. Legal obligation? Absolutely not. You don't have a legal obligation to help another person. That is the rule. That ought to be the rule. A moral obligation? Absolutely. I think you got a moral obligation to help your neighbor if you can.
So if I have a veteran who goes to war to protect our country, to protect the society, and they're injured, and they come back, there should be no legal obligation to help that veteran?
If you
In
want to,
your
you
mind?
can.
No, legal. I understand the difference.
Well, look, I think that's a function of the contractual relationship between the person who enlisted or joined and the person who's paying them.
How do you divide that contract up amongst citizens living on one city
Look,
block?
Mark, did you ever read anything from Ayn Rand?
No. So let's go back to my question.
Well,
How
let
do
me
you
back up. Let me
divide
back
that
up.
up
Let me back up a little bit.
between people living on the same city block? I just don't conceptually see how you can say
It's like saying
this first house you pay because you want to. Second and third house you don't want to, so don't pay. So the soldier's going to go across the continent to protect the country, but he's only protecting the house that's paying him. That makes no sense to me. He's protecting all the houses.
You've identified one of the other things on my top 10 things that are wrong with America. The inability to understand the notion that because you or I or nobody at present can quite understand how the market would deal with a particular problem, to conclude that there is no market solution to the problem. It's like let me give you an example. When we first started doing the whole email
Well,
thing.
do you have just down my example? Do you have a market solution to that example?
But your very question shows that you don't understand what I'm saying. what I'm saying
I
is
admit it
because
makes no sense to me. I
okay,
admit
well, let me
that.
try to give you an example to try to clarify it. When we first started doing email, which wasn't that long ago, I couldn't quite understand how I would protect myself against all of this spam. It occurred to me as I was getting spam after spam after spam, I had no concept of what I could do. And there were laws that were being talked about banning spam. Remember the Congress was talking about laws on preventing people from spamming. Junk faxes were also being talked about, and actually we did get laws against junk faxes, which are slightly different. But the transaction cost to send a spam to someone else doesn't really cost the receiver of the spam to incur any expense. So I was sort of troubled by this problem. I couldn't figure out what market solution could possibly arise to fix this issue. And then I found this company that had this product called Spam Arrest, which I couldn't envision. But the way it worked is my mailbox was redirected to them, and I either approved or didn't approve the sender, and I got zero spam. The point was there was a market solution that I, as a non-expert in that area, I couldn't understand exactly how that could be solved.
Do you have any societies to point to that have ever succeeded with this model you have?
Well, let's talk about the need for military to begin with. You know, our country creates problems.
Wait, you skirted my question. Can you point to any society in history that has prospered under the model that you're purporting to believe in?
I think that
But every society's failed, so...
I think the United States did pretty well
So
for
that
the
we
first
know
several
that.
years. I think the United States was pretty close to a libertarian society for the first many years.
100
And,
years.
and of
Still
course,
had
before
rules
the
and laws
American
and taxes.
and of course before the American Revolution, people could have said exactly that. Could you ever imagine a society that was based on capitalism, that didn't have divine right of kings and things of that nature, and didn't rule with a sort of heretical king? And so,
But let me
just
tell you-
because something hasn't happened, I think we're evolving as a society.
Yes, I think we have, by the way. And I think part of our prosperity is that we have evolved through laws. I think this
Nobody's
process
against.
of
Let's
laws
review.
has helped us
Nobody's
get
saying
there.
they're against laws. We're only against laws that violate the notions of initiation of force. We're not against laws.
We know, by the way, in this conversation that the difference is on a tax. We already know. So no use going back to that.
I mean,
I do
you
understand your
can't-
point on that.
you can't
So you're
be-
shaking your head that you don't think I understand. I do understand that point. I just cannot envision. So I ask again,
So let me
a society that can function without a central taxation system to support their military personnel.
What makes you so intent on having such a strong military presence
To protect us.
I think we have the ability right now at this moment in time to destroy the planet Earth. I don't know how many hundreds of times over.
So you're also you are not in favor of the military. It sounds like, unless I'm misunderstanding.
I'm in favor of everything that is consistent
Wait.
with the notion,
I understand
including
that.
defense.
Does the military, a paid military force, where the people as a whole pay for that military?
I wouldn't force anybody to pay for anything they didn't want to pay for. Period.
Man, how do you do that?
Because
That makes no sense to me.
And just
I do not know how you can possibly think that makes sense.
well, but you don't know. But just because you don't know doesn't mean that there could look. What would really happen?
I
What I
did not
suspect
even
would
comprehend
happen.
how that
I
could
suspect that there probably would be certain types of insurance packages that involved local police, local fire,
Mark?
local ambulance, and
Mark?
probably some kind of a national defense.
Mark,
sense.
Mark, how would
Well,
we get
we wouldn't get to invade Iraq and Iran and all these other countries that will to sort of spread our version of democracy. We'd have to limit our activities to just defending
Mark.
our homeland.
how would we get our shoes? Come on.
well, that's it. That's certainly not even close to the same subject.
It's the same subject.
No, his point.
Shoes and the military.
His
defense?
point. His point.
No, that's not even close.
His
I
point-
can choose the color and style of my shoes.
wow, that's
But
great.
to choose the
What freedom you
protection
have.
that I
His
get.
point. Right.
Well, you're not even
his
in the debate. Turn
No,
his
no,
mic
it
off.
is.
That makes no sense.
His point comes from.
I'm an idiot now. I'm an idiot
His-
because I compare shoes differently.
Because you don't understand
than
what
I
I'm
compare
saying.
because
you don't understand it because
it
you
makes
won't let
no
me talk.
sense.
You win by talking over the other person.
Yes, in this case, yes. It makes no
Well,
sense to
I
compare
think-
a pair of shoes
No, that
to
wasn't
the military.
That wasn't the comparison.
That was the comparison.
Well, let me try to flesh it out because this actually comes from me, and I heard it from a professor of mine in law school who actually had a friend who was privileged enough to go talk to people after the Soviet Union fell, and they gave a presentation about capitalism and starting up businesses and things like that, and they were talking to people who had always lived in a society where the government was the provider, the only provider of shoes. And after listening to this tremendous long presentation about capitalism and how goods and services can be delivered at low transaction costs in good, solid market prices through capitalism rather than socialism, this person asked a question that was very telling, which was, that all sounds great, but if the government stopped providing shoes, how would we get shoes? It's the question that they sort of had this blind spot about not understanding how the market would provide shoes when they've lived in a society where the government had been the provider of shoes.
But you have an attorney mind. You should certainly see the difference between a pair of shoes that each person down the block can have different shoes and a blanket military protection where each person down the block does not have a choice of changing whether they
You're
do or do
talking
not
about
pay
a
for
free
it.
rider problem, and there's lots of economic answers to the free rider problem. Look, for example, if we have local police and you sign up for the local police, and I sign up for the local police, and he signs up, and Mike doesn't want to sign up, and he signs up. Well, how could we possibly deal with that? You would say, my God, Mike gets protection. But, there's lots of things that a free market might come up with. Maybe the free market would publish a list of people who are protected by the local police and people who aren't protected by the local police.
That makes absolutely no sense.
It's called freedom. If the way I hear what you're saying,
so a person who can't afford police protection, let's say they're born with a mental disability, so they don't have the earning power that another person has, then they just suffer for that unless somebody has the charitable mind to help them.
What about food? And what about clothes?
Exactly.
And what about
Where do you draw the line?
And what about shoes? And what about television sets and
line,
cars?
by the way, and we draw
I
that
am not
through
my
our
brother's
process.
keeper, nor is he mine.
So society is drawing the line through our political process. We have 3 branches of government that I think were inspired. We have protections through laws, and if you don't like them, as we talked at the end of the last show, you can get involved and get the laws to go the direction.
I don't vote. I'm not stupid.
All right, can I jump in for a little bit
I'm
here?
astounded by that comment. Yes,
First of
yes,
all,
Dr. Tenbury.
First of all, for my ideologue friends to some degree, we part company in some way. I disagree with you calling our host stupid. I have to be honest with you. I mean, no. The thing is, this is exactly how Republicans are seeing so-called libertarian Ron Paul supporters as
My
angry
point
and
was
frustrated.
my point was that he overdrowns the other person. He doesn't let them speak. That's how he wins. That's what I meant by that.
Well, I think you've been quite fair. But that being said,
thank you.
But that being said, let me just point out that a different perspective. I agree that we're not looking, at least I and many people like myself, are not looking for an extreme view of having anarchy and no military and none of this. It seems to be where people jump to that conclusion that when we're talking a philosophy that hasn't really been seen. And so let me give an example. As a doctor, there's 2 types of medicine they talk about. There's what's called natural medicine now, and then allopathic medicine, which most people consider conventional medicine, drugs and surgery. I practice both actually in my office. That's why I do quite integrative work. But nevertheless, when you are a surgeon, you see everything through a scalpel or a drug. And when someone has a problem, it's you give a drug and you quickly and forcefully move that body system, what it's trying to do something else. And hopefully it's for the good. But then often you might have some side effects, and then you need another pill to deal with that side effect, and things sometimes get out of hand. Whereas in natural medicine, one of the tenets is, I won't mention in Latin, but basically to trust in the healing power of nature. That you don't always have to keep forcing the body. If you just allow the body to heal on its own and kind of coddle it and work with it, you can get a much more natural healing, proper healing, without all the side effects. Okay, so that's, and again, many times there are these 2 extremes. People think if you're a natural person, then my gosh, well, if you have an auto accident, are you going to avoid going to the ER doctor? No, you're going to go to the ER doctor. Certain medications perhaps you need. But there's the concept to first get out of the mindset of a drug for a drug which causes other problems. I mean, even the economy, it's the same thing. You have stimulus. You do a stimulus dollars. You get an offshoot somewhere. A stimulus of cortisol. You wind up getting side effects somewhere else with an initial. So a lot of what I think he's trying to talk about, and for me too, this part that I agree with, is to understand the mindset of the concept. But I think it's been lost that we don't have to have the government do everything. You don't have to have a surgeon or a doctor deliver babies. For millions of years, we delivered babies without going to a hospital.
Okay.
Today, people think you need the government hospital.
Marco's been itching.
Sure.
Grab the mic, Marco.
Okay.
He's been over there just itching to say something. I'm very curious to see what it's going to be.
Going back to our whole thing, and I don't think anybody here they're not against a strong national defense. I think everybody's here for a strong national defense.
I don't think that. Are you for a strong national defense?
I'm for a national defense that is strong enough to accomplish the one mission I think that is appropriate for the military, which is protecting this country and the people who live here, period.
Okay, but there's a difference.
And touching on that, and I think this is what it is, and I think this is what everybody kind of agrees with. When you go out and you spend $1.6 trillion a year on hundreds of military bases that are outside of the United States, look, that's not protecting us.
But doesn't that completely leave the debate that we're on, though?
No, not necessarily, because I think we got cut off, and I think that was one of your main points, as you were trying to say, is, look, there's a point with strong national defense, and we're all for that. Ron Paul's for that.
The fundamental discussion that we're having, that we have a very different view on, is whether House Number B should be forced and theft to pay a tax that pays for the national military.
We agree on that.
It gets right down to that.
We agree on that.
I say yes.
But we agree on what? Part of that.
I agree with you on that point, but to state it more...
Which point did you agree with me on?
The point that the fundamental debate that we're having is whether people can...
Right.
But
Okay.
I would state it even more broadly. The real dispute that we're having is I'm simply saying, in all cases... No human being has a right to initiate force against another human being, no matter how important the cause. You can identify national defense or health care for children or food or mentally disabled or this or that, and I'm simply saying those might be very good causes, but you still don't get to impose your will on another person. You are saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you are saying, Mark, I think... There are times when I get to impose my will upon another person to accomplish certain goals. There are other people out there in the world who also impose their will on other people for goals. Some of their goals I agree with. Some of their goals I don't agree with.
Let's use the correct word.
This is what make the distinction between the Republicans and the Democrats, and then the Libertarians.
But you're close.
The Libertarians are saying we don't get to initiate force against another person, period. It's a legal issue. Moral questions are completely separate. Democrats and Republicans are saying, of course we get to initiate force against other people. They're just simply arguing about when, how much force, and for what purposes they get to use the force. So, Mark, my friend, you're saying you are a Republican, but I really don't see you any different than a Democrat. You're simply saying you have a certain set of goals that you are willing to impose your views on others by force to accomplish, and I'm just simply saying it's wrong. No matter how many important causes you throw at me, imposing your will on your neighbor by force is wrong every time.
Okay, so you're putting two words in the sentence interchangeably. We and I. The plural group of society versus the singular Mark Winsor. There is a difference between that.
The we is sort of we libertarians. We of freedom. We of the people who
by the way, I only have a few more minutes, so I'm going to have to jump in despite my criticism that's unfair. When you in a sentence say, I, Mark Winsor, am going to impose my will, that is an unfair characterization of my position.
I don't think it is.
Well, I understand that. That's why I'm clarifying what you think, because you're wrong. We, as society, need to have laws that protect everyone. The enforcement of those laws or the carrying out of some of these functions of government cost money. Therefore, we must have some sort of income to society
so I would state
to
it
cover
like
it all.
this.
So I'm saying that we are not theft.
I get
when
it.
We
You're saying,
have a global, because people can always choose to leave to some society.
Right.
You're going to create that has that system that would fail, by the way.
Me, Mark Winsor, I think it's okay to initiate force against other people for things I think are important.
I have
a whole bunch of friends.
Hold on. And I
have a whole bunch of friends who also feel the same way. And together, we as a collective feel that it's okay to initiate force against other people. And the most horrifying of everything that you said the entire time, if you don't like it, we'll run you out of town. We're going to impose. If you don't like it, you can leave.
Yours is even more horrifying.
Just like Hitler could have said to the Jews, "Look, we're going to put you. We're going to put you in
Hitler.
No,
can you believe
we're going to put you in the gas chambers, and if you don't like it, you can leave and flee."
You're comparing me to Hitler.
I'm actually not comparing you to Hitler.
Enjoying the constitutional rights we have of a free society with certain group protections. I am amazed at that. And you still could not answer the basic question other than saying, oh, it would work itself out. We have no question. But how do we have group protections without the group being responsible to pay for it? That could not be
You're
answered.
under the misconception we are in a free society. That's what I like best about it.
Right. That's what I was just going to talk to you about. I mean, do you acknowledge the fact that this wonderfully, divinely inspired Constitution has produced a society which imprisons by far more of its citizens than any other country in the history of the planet Earth?
I believe our society is more free than it would be had we not had the Constitution. Yes.
So you're not
I'm very
bothered.
grateful for the laws we have. And by the way, I'm certainly bothered when any innocent person is in prison.
I'm not
for
talking
something.
about innocent. I'm talking
No,
about
I'm
people
not
who are
bothered
guilty.
about being protected
Hold it. I'm
about
talking about
things.
people who are guilty of things that should not be crimes in the first place, like smoking marijuana.
How about killing somebody?
Those are violent crimes.
But we could go back to there. A violent crime of killing somebody, you have to put them in a prison, in my opinion. So, yes, I believe somebody who murders another human being should not be left to just roam the streets. The prison costs money. Who's going to pay for it? In your opinion, it's those who want the benefit.
We have
in
private
my
prisons
position,
already.
See, he
We
talks
have
about
private
cutting off, but he
prison-
cuts me off.
We have
In
private
my
prisons
opi-
already, Mark.
It's funded by taxpayer dollars. Yes, they are funded by... Yes, they are. They are indeed. They are indeed funded by taxpayer dollars.
And I think
They are
before we-
subcontractors to the state that pays from taxpayer dollars.
They are. You're
And
right.
so they are. Thank you very much for acknowledging
No,
that.
they are,
They
but-
are. So
but
with
the
that,
question is,
we only
could-
have 2 more minutes or 1 more minute, and I get the minute because it's my show. Thank you. It's my show.
It's the
So
best
I
show
get-
you ever had, Mark,
Thank
by
you.
the way.
I don't know. The one before this was pretty good as well. All I'm saying is that I personally am grateful for a country that gives us a balance and a method to choose, a method to get involved, a method to change the laws if we want to. I am grateful for that method, and I believe it works. And that was very inappropriate. All right, thank you for joining me. I'm Mark Winsor. Join me again next week, 5 o'clock p.m. God bless you all, even those that mock me.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was a good show.
Edible arrangements, beautiful, delicious, and delivered right to your door. You won't believe your eyes when you feast upon these beautiful edible gifts.
Located in Queen Creek on Combs and Ganzel in the Fry's Shopping Center, Edible Arrangements is the leading purveyor of delicious